So, good morning and good evening. Welcome to the Friday Study Circle, where by the grace of God, these days we are going through the passages of the Sunlit path. Those are words, passages from what the Mother has said, on how to live a sunlit life, like follow the sunlit path towards more light. So, I'll share the screen. And just before that, I hope we are centered, but still we'll just give ourselves 1 minute to center our beings. We can focus on our breath or whatever works for us to be available here to what we are about to read. Aspiring and praying for more flexibility, suppleness, openness, courage, and will to make these words a practical thing for me and not just something I read or get entertained. Invoking Mother and Sri Aurobindo's presence and grace. Thank you. So last week we had covered the passage Conquering Fear, and Captain will correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
And
you're right.
yeah, thank you, Captain. And this week we have to start with true courage. So we had a good thought provoking, reflective discussion on various aspects of fear. And let's see what we see today. So, anybody who's willing,
Yeah, I'll start reading.
thank you.
True courage. True courage, in its deepest sense, is to be able to face everything in life, from the smallest to the greatest things, from material things to those of the spirit, without a shudder, without physically, without the heart beginning to beat faster, without the nerves trembling or the slightest emotion in any part of the being. Face everything with a constant consciousness of the divine presence, with a total self giving to the divine, and the whole being unified in this will. Then one can go forward in life. One face anything, whatever. I say without a shudder, without a vibration. This, is the result of a long effort. Unless one is born with a special grace, born like that. But this indeed is still more rare.
Yeah, that's a small passage. Thank you, Captain. Any reflections are welcome.
Whenever I read about this fear and courage, so I remember Swami Vivekananda when he was attacked by the monkeys or Hanumans, actually. And when he was being chased, and he was also, and they were creating noise behind him, and he started running, and they were creating more noise and following him. Then suddenly some idea came, he stopped, and they also stopped behind. And when he turned back, and they also turned to their back. And when he started approaching them as if he's picking up some stone to hit them or something, and they ran away from that place. So this is the courage we have to develop in ourselves to face any challenge or anything comes on the way, whether it is a small or big one, we have to face. That was the thing which was coming in my mind. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Captain. And the title of the passage is True Courage. And somehow, when we hear the word courage, we think of big things, right? We think of big people, big things, maybe the freedom fighters, people scaling the Everest, doing the impossible. And yet, courage is needed for almost everything in our lives if we want to do it the right way, if we want to, move towards the truth. For a seeker, a will and courage, sincerity, will, courage, I mean, they're indispensable because every small win, every small stance against the flow, the habit, the vrittis, as we call them, it takes courage. I remember I was listening to some talks by from a very good orator, and he was saying that, who fails the most in life? And then his answer was, a sadhak, a seeker fails, basically confronts the maximum failures in life because, he's on vigilant every second. And he fails so many times because he's trying all the time. And that needs courage. That needs courage to be standing against the flow of our being, of the collective, as we were discussing last time, and still say, like mother says, anytime anything, like this happens, you fall, you stand up, dust your pants, look at the skies, smile and move ahead, even if you fall 100,000 times. So falling and getting up, falling and getting up, falling and getting up needs a lot of courage. So yeah, inviting more reflections on what I think courage is, or and then we can take it up line by line. Okay, so I'll just read it again, like we'll take it up in parts. So mother says, true courage in its deepest sense is to be able to face everything in life, from the smallest to the greatest things, from material things to those of the spirit, without a shudder, without the heart beginning to beat faster, without the nerves trembling or the slightest emotion in any part of the being. That's a very big ask. That's a very, because a lot of times, we lose it and then we get it back. We mentally kind of nudge ourselves, no, no, I have to be back and this does not make sense. We use reason. But the groundedness, the being, usually it's not that we don't feel anything. And a lot of times we let the winds pass. If there's fear, if there's weakness, if there's fall, if there is sadness, we see and we say, no, 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 don't go there, or come on, come back. But if there is rejoicing, if there is pleasure, if there is achievement, if there is good news, then also the nerves are trembling, right? That we say, oh, that's all cool, right? I'm happy. So we have to look at both these things. So true courage in its deepest sense is to be able to face everything in life, from smallest to greatest, from material to spiritual, without a shudder. Like, it should not create a movement in the being, without the heart beginning to beat faster. And one thing, one news, one happening, one taking away from me, the nerves tremble. There are so many emotions, even if they are underlying emotions, they are there and we see them. And if we don't see them, I pray we see them so that we know that they are there. So Mother says, face everything with a constant consciousness of the divine presence, with a total self-giving to the divine, and the whole being unified in this way. So, the above, what we read before sounds a bit too much. It feels, how is that even possible? Because when I look at myself, I see so many movements. So the mother says that how do you do this? So she says, face everything with the constant consciousness of the divine presence. A lot of time when we fear, when we act, when we react, when we are seeking comfort, security, we forget that we are held in her hands, in his hands. We forget that we are floating in love and bliss and security because we don't feel it, because we are so immune to what we are looking outside, what we are seeing outside, that we forget. So, if I can remember this constant consciousness of the divine presence in and around me, with the total self giving to the divine, and the whole being unified in this will, that may your will be done, not mine. If I truly believe that, that seems like something that would give me the strength not to be shaken, moved. So then one can go forward in life, can face anything, whatever. I say without a shudder, without a vibration. This, is the result of a long effort. Unless one is born with a special grace, born like that, but this indeed is still more rare. Now we talk about fear in the cells. We talk about how mentally you might believe anything, emotionally you might feel that certitude, you might think you have so much faith. And yet the cells, physical cells of the body, they know fear. They resonate, they vibrate in fear. So effort, 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 like for everything, effort is needed. And this might sound a bit negative or sad or disappointing or frustrating or tiring. But efforts we are putting, right? Everywhere, every time in life, everything is an effort. But this effort will at least bring us to an end of something, right? Something that is not needed in me. So these efforts towards light, towards fearlessness, towards more courage, they take us somewhere which is more profound, which is more, it changes, brings about the change in my being and not just a superficial achievement or gathering. Yeah, so it's just I'm going blah, blah, blah. So please, let's open up a little bit and talk about fear or courage or anything on this if we can see anything, and take this further so that something in us can move, right? Unless we acknowledge, unless we face, unless we accept, we remain the same, and then there's no point in such sessions, right? Yeah, so I think what we can do, at least after reading this, is become more aware to these movements, small things, something not going my way, news of a loved one being not well, something that I was aspiring for that didn't work out. something that I wasn't expecting happens, even a positive thing. How am I feeling? How's my body reacting, my emotions reacting? Let's start, let's aspire, let's will to be more aware of that so that we can see the dramas that go inside of me. Oh, that's a poem. Yeah. So, yeah. So, if we want, we can now take up the next passage. It was a small one and there's no reflection. And we did share a lot about fear in the last session last week. So, yeah. So, if anybody is willing, if there are no comments or reflections, we can take up the next passage, pleasure and pain.
Yes, pleasure and pain. If one can face suffering with courage, endurance, and unshakable faith in the divine grace, if one can, instead of shunning suffering when it comes, enter into it with this will, this aspiration to go through it and find the luminous truth, the unvarying delight which is at the core of all things. The door of pain is often more direct, more immediate than that of satisfaction or contentment. I am not speaking of pleasure because pleasure turns its back constantly and almost completely on this profound divine delight. Pleasure is a deceptive and perverse disguise which turns us away from our goal, and we certainly should not seek it if we are eager to find the truth. Pleasure vaporizes us, it deceives us, leads us astray. Pain brings us back to a deeper truth by obliging us to concentrate in order to be able to bear it, be able to face this thing that crushes us. It is in pain that one most easily finds the true strength again. When one is strong, it is in pain that one most easily finds the true faith again. The faith in something which is above and beyond all. Can you scroll up a little bit? I just want to read the first few lines. Yes, yes, that's good. Thank you. A little bit down, please. That, perfect. Thanks. Pleasure is a deceptive and perverse disguise which turns us away from our goal, and we certainly should not seek it if we are eager to find the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Jagan. So just looking at it more closely, Mother says that if one can face suffering with courage, endurance, and unshakable faith in the divine grace, if one can, instead of shunning suffering when it comes, enter into it with this will, this aspiration to go through it, and find the luminous truth, the unwavering delight which is at the core of all things. The door of pain is often more direct, more immediate than of satisfaction or contentment. If even if we look at regular simple things, not, I don't know, when Jagan was reading, this visual came to me that, when I've seen any movie, anything, when there is this warrior which is just going into the army of the opposite troops, the opposite side with a sword or anything in his hand. What one feel in one being when one sees that, what I feel when I see that one going directly into the troops of where there is so much threat, knowing that that's it, this is it. But one doesn't sit there and stand that, will I return? Is this the end of me? Is this a sensible decision? How much further should I go? What speed should my horse be in? All that, just, it seems it's a happening that you cannot stop yourself, because what you're fighting for is bigger than what you are. So if again, here everything is coming down to what is the aim of my life, right? If I'm seeking comfort, if I'm seeking just being who I am and just, I don't know, maintenance of who I am, especially materially, then one doesn't need to go here, right? And yet there are things which are bigger than me, yet there are things which I aspire to be, and yet there are things where I cannot make compromises. So just because we were talking about warriors, if we talk about, say, Rani Ki Jhansi, one of our favorite warriors, there was no chance she could win. And yet there was no chance that she could give Jhansi to anybody. Right? So she would rather die, for example, than do something which her being is not agreeing to. And died, I mean, she did die fighting for what she believed in, and that's a beautiful death. We all remember her, and we will remember her till, I think, there is this, especially in India, when we talk about the freedom struggle, the fight, the rights and the wrong. So those are smaller things, right? My city, my country, like, say, for example, in Jhansi, or what, when we're talking about warriors. And yet here, even the targets are so much bigger. There are truths, there is progress, there is growth of my being. So if one can face suffering with courage, endurance, and unshakable faith in the divine grace. Mother just doesn't say just faith, right? It has to be an unshakable faith. If one can, instead of shunning suffering when it comes, enter into it with this will, right? This is the visual I got when Jagan was reading, like just going into it, right? Instead of shying away, shunning, escaping, rejecting. If we just go into it, this aspiration to go through it and find the luminous truth, that why is this causing me suffering? What's in it? So go into it and find the luminous truths, the unwearying delight which is at the core of all things. The door of pain is often more direct, more immediate than that of satisfaction or contentment. It might not sound right, but we all know this, right? We all know this, and we have known this forever. There's so many masters and mystics, Surdas, Kabir Das, Tulsi Das, here nowadays there is some smiles about mysticism, right? Like when we look at these days, gurus, for example, there is bliss and happiness and smiles, and yet when we look at the mystics of the past, they're crying for intimacy, crying for I don't know, being one, there is pain. And there are so many couplets, right, where they say that, you give me pain because I know when I have pain, I remember you. I'm in constant touch with you. And we all know from our lives that it is when one is suffering, when one has something bigger than what one can face, it's then that we wake up and say, oh my God, what's happening? I can't take this. Take me out. When we need a death to wake up to life. We need a hammer, like Sri Aurobindo says, that pain is the hammer of the God that is there to break the dead resistance of the mortal soul. I don't know the exact one, I'm sorry. And a very common, this thing again from the Upanishads, they say that, when one is sleeping, if you're not dreaming, or if you're dreaming a good, pleasant dream, you keep sleeping with a smile on your face. But it's when you have a nightmare, is then you wake up that, oh my God, what was that? So the very similar happens to us, that when things get hard, it's then that we say that, no, no, no. This I can't take. This, it can't be. There has to be more. I have to come out of it, and then we act. Yeah, please, inviting reflections, anything from what we have read, any personal experience, if anything, at this point.
I think a couple of things for me. I think what you mentioned about courage in smaller things is what really resonates in our everyday life for me. Like the example of somebody very close to me, um, who was in a job that really did not enjoy, was very frustrated, was not happy day to day going to work, and could have done something, picked up a job that, would have given him or her more happiness, but chose to suffer. So over here, I think people get muddled, where they think this suffering I'm doing for my family. So it seems like a suffering and pain for a higher cause, for the comfort of my family, so that the money keeps flowing. I shouldn't move to a job where, I don't know if it will give me adequate money, or it's a business that may or may not work. So I think that going back inside and listening to your inner voice, why are you suffering, is also important to know whether really is it a higher cause, or is it that you are too scared to rock the boat. Um, and especially, I think for breadwinners, when the whole family is reliant on them. Like I know somebody who was working as a teacher, but had such amazing creative sense for designing clothes. um, would design lovely clothes for children, and it seemed like so artistic and beautiful, and yet continued being a teacher when she really did not enjoy it. So I think that courage to kind of get out of the rut and not think that this suffering is important for the family, or for yourself to kind of provide for the family. So the two things for me: courage in smaller situations in everyday life, to do what gives you a sense of purpose. And second is that sometimes that suffering you think you need to go for others, need to go through for others, is not really a suffering for higher cause. It is just material suffering that you're um, going through, just so that you feel okay, now we have enough money for our comforts. So, and yet it may be different for each family and each situation. I'm not trying to do a blanket assumption here, but yeah, I think courage in smallest things sometimes speaks volumes.
Yes, Deepa, thank you. And it's so much more easier to see it outside in others' lives than in my own life, right? So I think a very big lesson for us again and again, and we keep forgetting, is that when I see outside these things which are like black and white to me, right? It feels like, oh my God, why can't she see? Oh my God, kind of a thing, or just not, oh my God, normal drama, not no drama. And still I see, oh, this is what she's meant for. But this is where it feels it's naturally flowing for her. So when I see that, just aspiring and praying that I can see inside me too, right? Knowing now that I cannot see inside me that clearly. And of course, if I can see it outside of me, I must also be somewhere complicating things or not going where I'm supposed to be. So I hope that it leads now to more acceptance and more, turning the eyes within, so that learning from outside my life can change bit by bit by bit. So that's a very important, I think, thing to remember, because mostly we see outside, we wonder, we might comment, we might just stay silent and we just let it be. We say, oh, this person is doing that. Or why can't she see that? That's what they are meant for. But the light has to be put on me, because the only one I can work on or work with, and the only one I am truly responsible for, is myself. So let me change it in me. Let me be a little bit more or less of what needs to or need not happen. So then it leads to something positive, right? This observation, this alertness, this awareness. Then I think it reaches home. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think absolutely, because like in everyday life, I see that when things don't go as per plan, why does it bother us? It is a lack of courage to deal with the new situation. We don't know what the new situation will lead to, where will it lead to, what is the grand plan of the divine, and yet we get upset when the smallest of failures, the smallest of disappointments, the smallest of changes in life, which is not what you foresaw. And yet, that I think for me, mainly it is the lack of courage also over here, because you're so thrown off by what life has suddenly brought in front of you. And it's a lack of belief in yourself to deal with a different situation, with a unique situation, and also a lack of trust in the divine that they will show you the path, that there is more at play over here than what we can see.
Yeah. In addition to a lot of ignorance that we are living in, right? Like, because we feel that till now everything has worked out, or till now, or I know what is good for me, like you were saying, right? That is ignorance, because I don't. And yeah, and I know what is good for me. And it's like, it's so funny that, especially coming from India, we have this thing that, we have all heard growing up, that uski marzi ke bina to ek patta bhi nahi hilta, right? Not a single leaf can move without his grace, without his knowledge, without his will. And yet, when it comes to me, because it hits a weaker spot, a softer spot, the way I dance, or I lash out, or I fall down when things don't go my way, it's a good window to see the truth, right? To where I stand, or what my faith is, or where am I getting lost. So again, like, if we can use everything to wake up more, I think that's beautiful. That's a life well lived, so that we can be more awake. Yeah, I'm just repeating myself here. When you were sharing about doing things for the family and all, I was reminded of this story again in the Upanishads. I think it was Ratnakar. I'm not very sure that Ratnakar was, he something wrong was done to him, like something people were doing wrong things. He was in the king's army, or he could be somebody else. I apologize if the name is incorrect. But there was a person who was in the king's army who saw the king's people doing bad things to women and all. So he turned against them, against his own friends because they were doing something wrong. And then he was, kind of declared an outlaw, and so he started living in the jungles, and like Robin Hood, kind of a little bit, he started doing, bad things, and nobody could go to the jungle unless they are accompanied by some soldiers and all. And he thought he was doing the right thing, because if bad was done to him, he felt that with who's right, right? If there's no right, no wrong, let me do anything. And he was kind of standing against the king. And one day, I think it was Narad Muni who came and to the jungle, and everybody told him, "Don't go to the jungle. There's Ratnakar. There's Ratnakar." And he said, "No, no, I'm not scared of anything." So when Ratnakar finally met him and made him an hostage, he said, "किसके लिए कर रहे हो ये सब?" kind of. And he said, "अपनी family के लिए कर रहा हूँ. I'm feeding my family and stuff." And he said, कि all these sins that you are doing, these actions that you are doing, do you think your family would, if then you have to bear the brunt of the sins? You think your family would divide these among you? Like if you have to face hundreds, say, punishments, would they say that, okay, it was done for me, so let's divide it 20 each, for example? And he said, absolutely. He said, okay, go and ask your family, go, I'll wait here. So he went and he asked his wife, मैं इतना सब कुछ कर रहा हूँ, I'm doing these things. So when it comes to it, will you share this with me, the repercussions? And she was like, no, you are supposed to provide for us. If this is the way you're choosing to do it for us, why would I share? He got very surprised. He went to his children, the same answer. He went to his father, the same answer. That no, it's your thing, just your thing. We will not share anything with you. So, and then he becomes Valmiki and, he gets turned. But the thing is, a lot of times we tell ourselves that we are doing this for so and so. And if we ask the so and so, the answer would be, no, no, don't do anything for me. Live, do what makes you happy, do what, expands you. So the thing is that it's like I'm holding, I don't know, my own hands in a Hatskadi, and then I'm saying, oh, I'm not free, I'm not free, and I can just open it. The key is in my hand. I can a lot of times open that thing and walk free, and yet I don't. Because I do like believing that I'm doing this and this is serving others and my family towards the greater good.
Yeah, um, just an observation. The opposite of courage is coward. And although there are, there's this antonym for this, I find that, like, this is my understanding. I would like some correction, please. That I find that there is no cowardness. It's just that the courage is sleeping within. I say this because, you know, um, at certain times in life, when, we become really upset with something, and or I become really upset with something, I'm able to confront an individual or a group that I'm otherwise afraid of. And or kind of not confront, but kind of hold a discussion and convey my point firmly. And then after that, I return back and I think to myself, how did I do it? Where did this come from? So then I kind of realized that, okay, I'm not a coward. It's just that the sensitivity and the tolerance to situations, as these go up, sorry, that as the tolerance goes down or the sensitivity goes up, I think that's when automatically the courage comes. I don't know, because Like Deepa's example, if I am working in a position that I don't enjoy myself in, and yet I'm doing it, saying that I'm doing it for my family, that means I still have tolerance to this. So as my tolerance kind of subsides, kind of goes down, I think the courage will automatically come. So for me to work on is to um, increase my sensitivity so that the the because of which the result is courage. I don't know. Please correct.
Yeah, nothing to correct. You're right. It's like I feel that, how Diwali ke time pe they say कि although we think Diwali is this and that and crackers and parties and playing cards and drinks and food, but it's actually, तुम्हारी राम वापसी होनी है. मतलब that's the aspiration for Diwali, that how Ram returned to his home. You return to your home, your true home. But what do we take it as, right? So जैसे ही और वैसे ही, जैसे how we talk about Hanuman, that he was reminded that, oh, you have the strength, you have the strength. So I think for all of us, we have to reach that point where we are reminded that, oh, you're not weak. Oh, come on, you can fly. So although, this is a very common example that is used, but I think it's very true because we are all so powerful. We have so much inside us. And then yet we live the lives that we live without much adventure, courage, and I don't know. We don't fly over mountains, but we can. And when there is, when it will come down to it, like you're saying, you keep observing, right? You keep seeing that, okay, you think you're a coward. And Hanumanji was happy living how he was living until he reached a point where there was no option, right? Where he had to cross the ocean to reach Lanka. So I think we all are just maybe waiting for that point when we have to find that courage, because we cannot live on this side anymore. Something in us has to explore, go further out and explore. And I think this is what they talk about, right? When we were discussing, I don't know in which session, about the nature is slowly taking us towards evolution. But in humans, because we can see, we can discern, we can, partner with it and increase that curve of growth. We can, I don't know what word it was. Yeah, so that's exactly that. There's nothing called courage. Sorry, a coward. There's no one who's actually a coward. It's just that we don't know how to tap into our courage till we know it, and we will know it. And then comes the beautiful role of aspiration and prayers, right?
I also I also feel for me, I've always felt that, not always, but recently I feel that courage is also a journey and the meaning changes with the journey, because I remember um being a very rebellious person, and always saying, oh, I have to do this, very individualistic, that this is my way or highway. I don't want, if I don't want to do that, I won't do it. Oh, this is the session time, I won't do anything in the kitchen. Why do I have to be in the kitchen, cook? All these ideas. And I used to think that, okay, this is courage, I have to be courageous and do what I want. Or if I don't resonate with the job, any job, why should I do it and all? And I think it's necessary. It's of course very important not to go into inertia. But now somehow I feel that courage is not so much an exterior action that we do, for me at least. It's my inner state. I now think that even do I have to let go of a thing that I really want for the well-being of somebody else, that's courageous, because that's something that I really don't want to do. That's something that I really, a place where, if I'm a talker, or if I like to talk a lot, if I can just stop that urge and not do that, or if I don't like a job that's given to me. And now again, like Deepa said, it could be very different to everybody, but from one perspective, it could be at a time where you actually do it thinking this is divine's work. And for to really awaken to my divine nature, there's not one job that I need to be good at. I have to be good at everything. And that kind of surrender, where no matter where I'm placed in life, where the divine things I'm placed in life, I do it with equal equanimity and joy. um and yeah, so like I somehow really feel that. Or even like opposite view or radical views really used to disturb me. Now I feel maybe I need to have the courage and cultivate the space where I can sit with anybody anywhere and can listen to their point of view and just be at ease with it without having that kind of a strong resistance about how this should be or not be. So I think for me, I feel courage is also about having that inner equanimity in all circumstances of life and not having very strong opinions. So it's more inner than outer for me, I think. And it comes in stages. There are times when you need to take a stand as well, where you need to say, oh, this has to be done. But most of the times, maybe it's your own work that you need to do, not so much with the world, but with yourself. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Nandini. So going back to the passage. The mother says that if one can face suffering with courage, endurance, and unshakable faith in the divine grace, if one can, instead of shunning suffering when it comes, enter into it with this will, this aspiration to go through it and find the luminous truth, the unwearying delight which is at the core of all things, the door of pain is often more direct, more immediate than that of satisfaction or contentment. So a lot of times we don't enter into things, right? Like that's what we were kind of discussing, and that's the inner courage, right? We like the status quo. We feel, oh, why to go and mess up the situation? Why to rock the boat? Why to have those uncomfortable conversations and all? And yet, if we have suffered enough, hopefully it can, we will then have the courage that no, let me see what is beyond that. And secondly, it's this recognition that the way of pain, of suffering, is more direct, more immediate than, when I'm happy and things are going my way, when things are settled. So that's the first paragraph that we have been discussing. So moving further, I'm not speaking of pleasure, Mother says, because pleasure turns its back constantly and almost completely on this profound divine delight. Pleasure turns its back constantly and completely on this profound divine delight. So, it's like how we were reading, I think in yesterday's session when we were seeing that how Ashwapati, what he saw, and maybe it was, all the things that were achievable, how the thought stopped, and then there was more and more and more and more and more. So we realized, were discussing that we get content very easily. So if we are happy with small pleasures, we cannot get the absolute delight because we are contented, we don't go further. And that is why Mother says, I'm not speaking of pleasure. I mean, one of the things. Because pleasure, it just doesn't want the divine delight. It's very content with this. Yeah, it just helps us going. It just feels कि हाँ सब कुछ ठीक ही तो है. Everybody is living this life. This much is enough. But for the one who doesn't feel this is enough, there is more, then comes the further things. So pleasure is a deceptive and perverse disguise which turns us away from our goal, and we certainly should not seek it. So imagine that so much of our lives are directed towards, these gains, these achievements, goals, titles, bank balances. And here, Mother is saying that pleasure is a deceptive and perverse disguise which turns us away from our goal, and we certainly should not seek it if we are eager to find the truth. You know how she says that do nothing for the sake of pleasure, but derive pleasure in everything you do. So, but that's our goal, right? And that's where it gets tricky. That's where we get sidetracked. Totally, we change our path. That's why, they say करने कुछ और आए थे, करते पूरी जिंदगी कुछ और रहे, and then time's up and then you're gone. Sometimes it feels that as if, it's like I was sent to the market to get something, but I get so enamored by the bells and the whistles and the merry-go-rounds and the lights and the offerings that I totally forget why I was here. Yeah. So pleasure is a deceptive and perverse disguise which turns us away from our goal, and we certainly should not seek it if we are eager to find the truth, right? And if we are not, then of course there's no even discussion that needs to happen. So pleasure vaporizes us. It deceives us, leads us astray. It gives us a false sense of everything is well. This is it. This much is enough. Is everything not okay? Till something big happens and we say, no, it's not okay. So pain brings us back to a deeper truth by obliging us to concentrate in order to be able to bear it. Right? We have to, so much is happening. I don't know what all I have to do. And then pain comes and I cannot then focus on the 15 different bells and whistles that I was so enamored with. I turn within, or there's even a toothache or anything. Nothing matters. I don't know, whatever is in front of me, it will be like, forget it, do something about this. So this is quite nice, that obliging us to concentrate in order to be able to bear it, to be able to face that thing that crushes us. It is in pain that one most easily finds the true strength again when one is strong. It is in pain that one most easily finds the true faith again, the faith in something which is above and beyond all pain. In today's day and world, we are all about management, right? Pain management, stress management, this management, but the management doesn't ever lead to a solution, right? It has to be transcended, and that's what Mother is, I think, talking about here. That it's when you go in, you get out. You know how they say that एक आग का दरिया है और डूब के जाना है, for example. We keep trying to escape, right? We keep trying to not, I don't know, not drown. And yet it is said that one has to drown if one has to go. One has to drown to what one believes, right? Is right, is what one wants. So the faith in something which is above and beyond all pain. Yeah.
This reminded me of a story. Actually, I was reading the other day of Chote Narayan ji in ashram, and when he came to the ashram, he used to have a lot of nightmares. He used to have a lot of nightmares, and it used to really torment him. He used to see demons coming close to him and really like gnawing at him. And he went to the mother and he said, Mother, it's really tormenting me, and I feel really afraid of it. I don't know what to do. And mother looked at his eyes and he said, if you want to do yoga, then there shouldn't be any fear. And he looked at her. I said, okay. And then kept continuing, and he didn't realize what to do because it was really painful as well, to be in that state. Then again, he went to the mother, that in the hope that mother will do something and it will be okay, because that's how we think divine is as for us, right? We have all these wishes that we go and we think we can. He's like Aladdin ka chirag and he'll get it done. And she said the same thing again, that you want to do yoga. You can't. You have to get rid of fear. You shouldn't be afraid. So I said, Mother, what should I do? Because he wanted mother to say that, okay, I will, I will do something. And my mother said, if you can't bear it, then you have to leave from here. You have to go. But then the pain was so intense and he was relatively young, that he left. But then, of course, when he was not in ashram, it immediately subsided. Everything was okay and he was normal. And I think he lived few years. But then one day this thing dawned, I think what mother is saying, that if I really want to, but he went into a very status quo, where a normal life. And because, his soul was such that he had to live that life because it was his soul chose it. So he was not happy there too. Then he said, okay, I have to live it, I have to conquer it. And he came back, I think after a year or two. Then he again started having, and with more intensity. But this time, exactly, that's where, he said, I think there was written that he bore it, like there was perseverance, and there was this like, I have to really transcend this, something in me which is causing this. So really, of course, did some sadhana and all of that, and took it a year or two as well to get rid of all of this. But he bore that pain with the faith that, and he used to, of course, call mother and be near mother, but it doesn't mean that it went away. And then, of course, eventually it subsided, and then he had really beautiful experiences too, experiences, because he was quite sensitive. So yeah, this reminded me of that.
Yeah, thank you, Nandini. Anybody else on what we have read or anything that comes up related to this? I think that's a very good ground for more reflection, more observation, more alertness towards what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So we have read two passages. One was true courage, and the other is pleasure and pain, which is again, how in general we take pain, how in general we take pleasure. We feel that if we hear it so often that he was so good and still this happened to him. Oh my God, God didn't, how could God be so rude, so mean, so I don't know, I'm losing, not getting words today. Yeah, no, unkind. Unkind is the word I was looking for. And yet we don't know what grace it is if it's wanting to show us something like, the example that Nandini just shared. Of course, mother could have waved a wand and the demons could have gone, the demons in his head or whatever they were trying to stop him from doing. But there are times when we have to take matters in our hand and transcend it for ourselves. Whenever there are obstacles, we have to find ways to jump across, right? Or move around, walk around. And that's our sadhana. So this thing that, okay, when things are happy and good, then that means all is well. And if there is pain, that means there is some past karma or I'm being made to suffer. I think that thinking now we can slowly start looking at and wonder if that is right. I think small, how these little windows we get that make us see things in a new way. So we can end the session here and hopefully aspiring that we kind of, reflect more on this, and maybe, hopefully, most likely there would be some changes, again, like Nandini was saying, inner changes, inner courage day to day. Maybe something shifts and we can see things for what they are towards more truth. So any last comment before we end? Okay, so thank you so much for joining in and sharing and reflecting. So thanking Grace, thanking Divine for the grace of such company, of these beautiful words, of these sessions, inspiring and praying for more courage, more truth in our lives for us and everyone else.
Thank you, Taru. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And happy Diwali.
Thank you, Veena ji.
Thank
To
you.
you too.
Thank you, and same to you. God
Thank
bless.
Thank you.